I want you to picture two men standing next to each other. Both of them are 70 years old, same age, same number of decades behind them, same American life of work and family and the accumulated weight of everything that comes with it. But that is where the similarity ends completely. The first man, let's call him Steve A., is on a beach in Southern California. He is pulling a kayak down toward the waterline, moving with the kind of easy, unhurried physical confidence that most people associate with someone 2 decades younger. His mind is sharp. His posture is solid. He is not running through a mental checklist of medications or calculating how far he can walk before his knees start complaining. He is thinking about the water and the horizon and what he wants to do with the rest of his afternoon. He is not managing his decline. He is living his life, fully, deliberately, on his own terms. The second man, Steve B., is struggling to get up from his couch, not because of a specific injury, not because of a single catastrophic health event that came out of nowhere, because after decades of quiet, invisible biological erosion that he never saw coming and never had the information to prevent, his muscles have wasted to the point where standing up from a soft surface requires real, visible effort. His memory is unreliable. The mental sharpness he had at 50, at 45, at 40, it is gone, replaced by a fog that never fully lifts. He spends his days managing a medication schedule and his nights lying awake, worrying about becoming a burden to his kids. Now here is the question that most Americans never ask directly enough. What actually separated those two men? Because if you ask most people, they will give you the same answer. Steve A. got lucky. Good genetics, the right parents, the right biological lottery at birth. And Steve B. just got the bad draw. The decline was inevitable. Aging is aging. You cannot fight it. That is just how it goes. That assumption is wrong. And the science that proves it wrong is not fringe research. It is not controversial, and it is not new. The study of longevity and biological aging has now established, with remarkable consistency, across multiple independent research programs, that approximately 70% of how you age, whether you are the man on the beach or the man struggling off the couch, is determined by modifiable lifestyle factors, not by the genes your parents gave you. Genetics loads the gun. The way you choose to live pulls the trigger. And the tragedy, the real tragedy, the one that costs Americans billions in preventable healthcare and millions in years of lost quality of life, is not that we age. The tragedy is that most of us are accelerating our own biological decline without knowing it. Through patterns so normalized by the way modern American life is structured that they do not register as dangerous until the damage is already deep enough to be visible. Stay with me through the next 20 minutes. Because what I am going to walk you through today is not a motivational speech about discipline or grit. It is a specific, evidence-based explanation of what is actually happening inside your body as you age. Why one of the most extensively researched and least expensive supplements on the market has emerged as a serious tool in the science of healthy aging, and precisely how it works at the cellular and physiological level that most health content never reaches. By the end of this video, you will understand something that most Americans, including most physicians in routine clinical practice, have never fully connected. That creatine is not just a supplement for 22-year-olds trying to get bigger in the gym. It is a molecule with growing and compelling evidence for protecting muscle, bone, brain, and metabolic function across the decades of life when those systems are under the most sustained and consequential biological pressure. Let's start with the most important thing to understand about how aging actually damages the body. Because most people carry a mental model of aging as a gradual, roughly uniform slowdown. Everything just gets a little worse, a little slower, a little weaker, at more or less the same pace across all systems. That is not how it works. Aging operates through specific mechanisms, specific biological processes that drive the decline. And understanding those mechanisms changes everything about how you think about what can realistically be done to intervene. The most consequential of those mechanisms, the one with the widest reach into your overall health, your functional independence, your cognitive performance, and your risk for virtually every major chronic disease that kills Americans, is sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the medical term for the age-related progressive loss of muscle mass, muscle strength, and functional physical performance. It is not simply getting weaker the way you might after skipping the gym for a few months. It is a systemic biological process involving changes in muscle fiber composition, the deterioration of the neuromuscular junctions connecting your nervous system to your muscles, a progressive shift in muscle protein turnover that favors breakdown over synthesis, declining anabolic hormone levels, increasing low-grade systemic inflammation, and the accumulation of senescent cells, aging cells that have stopped dividing but remain biologically active in ways that damage the surrounding tissue. Sarcopenia typically begins its measurable progression in the third and fourth decade of life. Most Americans start losing muscle mass at a rate of roughly 3 to 8% per decade, beginning in their 30s, with that rate accelerating significantly after 50. Researchers estimate that by 2050, over 200 million older adults worldwide will be living with clinically significant sarcopenia. And the consequences extend far beyond how you look in the mirror or whether you can still perform athletically. Reduced muscle mass is independently associated with increased risk of falls and fractures, reduced insulin sensitivity, and higher risk of type 2 diabetes, significantly slower recovery from illness or surgery, impaired immune function, and this is the connection that most Americans never make, the one that should concern every person in this audience: accelerated cognitive decline. A comprehensive body of research examining the relationship between sarcopenia and cognitive function has found that cognitive impairment appears in roughly 40% of individuals diagnosed with sarcopenia, compared to 25% of those without it. Let that sink in for a second. Losing muscle is not just a physical problem. It is a brain problem. The muscle-brain axis, the bidirectional biological communication network connecting your skeletal muscle to your central nervous system, means that what happens to your muscles does not stay in your muscles. The decline is coupled and directional. Lose the muscle mass, lose the cognitive edge. And equally important, protect the muscle and you are simultaneously protecting cognitive function through mechanisms involving myokines, signaling proteins secreted by active muscle tissue that cross the blood-brain barrier and support neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, and the maintenance of the executive function that your professional and personal life depends on for decades to come. This is why the question of how to protect muscle mass as you age is not a fitness question in the narrow gym culture sense of that word. It is a longevity question. It is a quality of life question. It is the question that ultimately determines whether you are Steve A or Steve B at 70. And it is precisely where creatine enters this story, in a way that is supported by a depth and breadth of clinical evidence that the vast majority of Americans have never been exposed to in any useful form. Creatine is a small molecule that your body already makes. Your liver, kidneys, and pancreas synthesize roughly 1 to 2 grams of it every day from 3 amino acids: arginine, glycine, and methionine. You also get creatine from food, primarily from red meat and fish. The supplement form is creatine monohydrate, the identical molecule manufactured to pharmaceutical-grade purity, available in powder form for literally pennies per gram. It is among the most extensively studied nutritional supplements in the entire peer-reviewed scientific literature, decades of controlled research across tens of thousands of participants. And while it has been recognized for decades as a performance enhancer for competitive athletes, the research of the past 15 years has revealed something far more important for most of the people watching this: its role as a direct and meaningful countermeasure against the specific biological mechanisms of aging. Here is the foundational mechanism. Inside your muscle cells, creatine combines with phosphate to form phosphocreatine. Phosphocreatine is your cell's rapid energy buffer, the reserve system that regenerates ATP, your primary cellular energy currency, during moments of high-intensity physical effort. When you contract a muscle powerfully, your body burns through available ATP in seconds. Phosphocreatine is what allows rapid ATP regeneration so that the effort can continue beyond that initial burst. As you age, your muscle phosphocreatine stores naturally and progressively decline. Your cells become less capable of producing and sustaining the rapid energy output that high-quality movement requires. The result is not just reduced athletic performance. It is reduced capacity for the kind of movement stimulus that your muscles need to maintain their mass and structural integrity over time. Less intensity in your training means less stimulus reaching the muscle. Less stimulus means the sarcopenia process advances faster. Supplementing creatine directly reverses that cellular energy deficit, and in doing so, it preserves the capacity for the training quality that drives the muscle preservation response that everything else depends on. But the mechanism goes considerably deeper than energy buffering, and this is the part that most creatine content never reaches. When intracellular creatine levels are increased through supplementation, research consistently shows reductions in muscle protein degradation, increased activation of satellite cells, and improvements in whole-body lean tissue mass. Satellite cells are the muscle stem cells responsible for repair and regeneration. They are what your muscle activates after a demanding training session to rebuild and reinforce damaged fibers. As you age, satellite cell activity naturally and significantly declines. This is one of the primary reasons older muscle responds less robustly to training than younger muscle. The repair crew shows up with fewer workers. Creatine supplementation appears to partially restore that satellite cell activation, creating a more favorable cellular environment for muscle protein synthesis and structural renewal, even in aging tissue that has already experienced meaningful decline. The clinical evidence for this is not speculative. Multiple systematic reviews and meta-analyses have examined thousands of participants across controlled trials, specifically in older adult populations. A 2024 meta-analysis incorporating 20 separate studies with over 1,000 older adult participants found that creatine, combined with resistance training, significantly improved maximal strength compared to training with placebo alone. That is a direct measure of functional muscular capacity, the measure that predicts fall risk, independence, and the ability to perform the basic physical demands of daily American life more reliably than almost any other single metric. And the broader body of evidence supports that creatine monohydrate at 3 grams per day or more, combined with resistance training, is a viable and meaningful intervention for improving strength, lean mass, regional muscle size, and functional ability in older adults. 3 grams per day. The cost of that daily dose using standard creatine monohydrate powder is approximately 15 to 20 cents. A monthly investment of under $6 that the published clinical literature supports as genuinely protective against one of the most consequential biological processes in human aging. Now let's talk about bones. Because the muscle conversation and the bone conversation are far more tightly coupled than most Americans realize, and creatine's emerging effects on bone health represent one of the more compelling areas of current research in the aging literature. Osteoporosis affects approximately 10 million Americans, with another 44 million having low bone density that puts them at significantly elevated fracture risk. For older adults, a serious fracture, particularly a hip fracture, is not simply a painful and temporarily disabling event. It is associated with dramatically increased mortality in the 12 months following the event, particularly in men over 70. The one-year mortality rate following a hip fracture in older men sits around 30%. This is not a minor health complication. For many people, it is the beginning of the end of independence, and often of life itself. The connection between muscle and bone is both mechanical and biochemical. Mechanically, muscle contractions place dynamic stress on bone, and bone tissue responds to that mechanical loading by maintaining or increasing its mineral density. When muscle mass and strength decline with age, the mechanical loading stimulus on bone declines in parallel. Less loading means less biological signal for bone maintenance. Bone mineral density falls in parallel with muscle mass in a syndrome researchers now call osteosarcopenia, the simultaneous occurrence of both conditions in the same individual, which carries a significantly worse risk profile than either condition in isolation. Creatine's demonstrated effect on muscle mass and training performance therefore carries an indirect but genuinely meaningful protective effect on bone, simply by preserving the mechanical stimulus that skeletal tissue requires to maintain its structural integrity across decades. Beyond the indirect mechanical pathway, researchers found evidence of more direct biochemical effects of creatine on bone biology. Studies have found that creatine supplementation appears to influence the activity of osteoblasts, the cells responsible for new bone formation, and may affect bone mineral content through mechanisms that researchers are still in the process of characterizing fully. The evidence here is less uniformly consistent than in the muscle domain, and not every study has shown the same magnitude of benefit. What is consistent across the published evidence is that the combination of creatine supplementation with progressive resistance training provides more robust protection against the compound decline of muscle and bone than resistance training alone. A practical finding that has direct implications for how Americans over 40 should approach both their training and their supplementation strategy simultaneously, rather than treating them as separate decisions. Before we go further, quick question, and I want your honest answer in the comments below. How old are you right now? And when did you last think seriously? Not just about general fitness or weight management, but specifically about what you are doing to protect your muscle mass and bone density as you age. Drop your age and your answer below, because the point at which a person starts treating these two variables as the priority they actually are determines more about their long-term trajectory than almost any single health decision they will ever make. Now let's talk about the brain. Because this is the dimension of creatine's relationship with aging that most people have never encountered in any useful context. And for an audience of high-performing, intellectually demanding Americans, it may ultimately be the most personally relevant part of this entire conversation. Creatine monohydrate is the form. Not creatine hydrochloride, not buffered creatine, not creatine ethyl ester, not any of the dozen proprietary formulations marketed under premium brand names at 3 to 5 times the cost of monohydrate. Those alternative forms exist because the supplement industry needs innovation narratives to justify premium pricing. The peer-reviewed evidence comparing them to monohydrate does not support the premium in any meaningful clinical sense for aging adults. Monohydrate has decades of safety and efficacy data behind it. Buy the least expensive pharmaceutical-grade creatine monohydrate you can find from a manufacturer that uses third-party testing for purity verification. Look for NSF Certified for Sport or Informed Sport certification on the label. Beyond that, the brand name is irrelevant. The molecule is the molecule. Hydration deserves explicit mention because it is the one practical variable most likely to produce minor side effects that get incorrectly attributed to creatine being harmful, rather than to their actual cause. Creatine draws water into muscle cells osmotically. This intracellular hydration is actually part of the anabolic signaling mechanism, a feature rather than a side effect. But it does mean that inadequate overall water intake can produce muscle cramping and headaches that are dehydration symptoms rather than creatine toxicity. A practical daily water target for most adults is approximately half your body weight in ounces. If you weigh 180 pounds, that is 90 ounces, roughly 11 cups, spread across the day. Not a dramatic change from normal, adequate hydration. Sufficient to prevent the minor dehydration effects that give creatine an undeserved reputation for causing cramping in some users who are simply not drinking enough water to begin with.